welcome to the Benton County Public Podcast. My name is Dan Crall. I'm your host and producer. I am here with the executive producer of the podcast, Benton County Public Information Officer Cory Grogan. And today we have the distinct honor of speaking with a trailblazer and a true public servant, John Haroldson. John Haroldson has dedicated his career to upholding justice and serving the people of Benton County, Oregon. As the first Latino district attorney in Oregon's history, John has not only broken barriers, but has also set a remarkable example of leadership, integrity, and a commitment to the community. Throughout his tenure, he has faced numerous challenges head-on, from tackling complex criminal cases to implementing innovative programs that aim to reduce crime and promote rehabilitation. And his efforts have not only strengthened the legal system, but have also fostered trust and collaboration within the diverse communities that he serves. As John prepares for retirement, we are going to take this opportunity on the Benton County Public Podcast to reflect on his journey. We're going to celebrate his achievements and honor his legacy. Today we're going to delve into milestones of his career, the impact he has made on Benton County, and the wisdom he has gained along the way. John is a dedicated public servant whose contributions will be remembered for years to come. And John, we'd like to thank you for your time today. It's a privilege to have you here.
Thank you, Dan. It's great to be here.
I'm going to hand things off to Cory, the Public Information Officer of Benton County and our executive producer, who's going to ask you some questions.
Okay, thanks, Dan. Sir, thank you for joining us today. First, we'd like to start off just learning a little bit more about your career and your legacy. And one of the things that really interested me is the fact that you're the first Latino district attorney in Oregon, in Oregon's history. And I just am wondering, how does it feel to reflect on your groundbreaking career?
You bet. Thank you, Cory. You know, I have really reached a place where I'm becoming very reflective on my career as I'm nearing my retirement. And as I reflect, it's interesting to really appreciate the substance of that journey, the countless number of people who I have worked with, who I have advocated for, who have challenged me and inspired me along the way. It's been an incredible journey. When I reflect on that journey, I also can't help but think about my own expectations when I began the journey. I know that at the beginning, I didn't consider that one day I would become the first Latino district attorney in the state's history. I just tried to do my best at whatever task I was given. And in doing so, more opportunities came about. Until one day, I found myself with the opportunity to serve as district attorney. And at that point in history, I would become the first Latino district attorney.
When you talk about that journey, can you elaborate a little bit more on what inspired you to get into a career of law, specifically in public service?
As I reflect back, I recognize that I did not tend to decide one day I want to be this or one day I want to be that. My approach was one of taking on the challenge before me, doing my best, and see where that would lead me. So even with regards to becoming a lawyer, I didn't have an idea as a child, one day I want to be a lawyer. To the contrary, I wanted to be a professional baseball player. And that didn't work out, but I went to college and I majored in philosophy. I loved the study of philosophy, but as I was concluding my studies, I had to face the reality that I wasn't going to get paid to go on the hill and think. So I really began to think about what I wanted to do once I finished undergraduate studies. And I remember that my mother would tell me, as a child, to my brothers and I, deben ser doctores, abogados o sacerdotes. You should be doctors, lawyers, or priests, which is kind of a cliche, Latino, old school sort of standard. And even though at the time I really didn't know what it meant to be an attorney, I remembered her words, and I decided to apply to law school. And I was accepted, and I went to the University of Oregon so that I could be in a place where I didn't know anybody and wouldn't be distracted. And so that was really my entrance into the study of law. And while I was in law school, a friend approached me and said, hey, there's this great job managing the prosecution program for the city of Albany. If you want to get trial experience, it's a great job. And so I applied, and I got the job. So I was able to work as an intern city prosecutor for the city of Albany and gain a lot of trial experience. So that was the first time I had an opportunity to feel what it's like and to advocate for justice. And in the course of that experience, it really resonated with me. Now, I think that our lived experience has a lot to do with a passion for justice. And I can certainly speak to the fact that my lived experience did heighten my desire to see justice served for everyone. And so it became a very natural fit for me.
It's really neat to hear how your mother inspired you and partially to do that, and I bet she's very proud of you. Can you share some of the most significant milestones and achievements from your time as Benton County District Attorney?
That's a great question. It reminds me a little bit of somebody asking you, what's your favorite food, or what's your favorite song, or what's your favorite movie? Because with a long career, you have so many experiences and so many milestones, it becomes difficult to choose. There have been many cases that will be with me forever because of the gravity of the case and the impact not only on the victim of the case or the family of the victim, but also the community as well. At the same time, there's the collective experience and achievements that serve as a marker for the body of work that we were able to do. And so, it would be easy to talk about, I did this case or I did that case, but that seems less meaningful than really recognizing what that means in the context of how people are impacted.
That's really interesting. Yeah, and that just makes me think about, how you would feel about your legacy and what are some of the most rewarding parts of that and some of the most rewarding aspects of your career.
First, I would say that I find myself overwhelmed with gratitude for the experiences that I've had with others. If we're not experiencing challenges and achievements, painful lessons, and growth with others, then we miss the opportunity of the shared human experience. And this career has offered me so much of that I just have a profound gratitude for those who have shared the experience with me along the way. Now, I do believe strongly that it's important to be competitive with yourself and to be self-aware and always seek to improve. The rest will take care of itself. I'm proud of the fact that I am the first prosecutor in the state's history to receive the Oregon State Bench and Bar Professionalism Award. That is something that, again, I was surprised when I received the award and really felt a great appreciation for what that meant historically. To be able to promote those standards here in Benton County and to know that what we were building in Benton County was a model that was being recognized not just regionally but also statewide and in some cases nationally as well.
What were some of the biggest challenges that you faced as district attorney?
Some of the biggest challenges that we face are challenges that are faced by many government entities, and that is resources. It's difficult when resources are limited and you don't have the infrastructure to be able to deliver the service of justice to the public in the way that you'd like to do. At the same time, resources are finite, and so you also have to be able to work within the scope of the resources that are provided. So it can be a challenge, but I think we've been very successful in managing those resources, and I think we've had great support from the county commissioners to ensure that we have enough resources to be able to get the job done. Another challenge that I have seen along the way, which is in a way a natural part of the system, that is that you're going to have cases where you may feel in your heart of hearts that a crime occurred, but you don't have enough evidence to be able to prove them. And that can break your heart a little bit, because you may have someone who has suffered from a criminal act, but you still have to meet the burden of proof beyond reasonable doubt. We have investigators and law enforcement that work really, really hard in their investigations to be able to put those cases together for us. But there have been some occasions where we just fall a little bit short, and that's always really tough. But for us, the standard that we set for ourselves is to always strive to do our best. And in doing our best, we know that no matter what the outcome is, that we really left it on the field, as they say, to use a sports analogy. But I believe that's what our constituents would expect of us.
Do you remember a particular case, maybe in recent memory or distant memory, where you felt like you would rule differently based on what your emotions are telling you, but the evidence just wasn't there?
Sure. Well, what an example of this would be, there might be enough evidence, but because of rules of evidence, rules of law, they're not admissible. You might have a confession that is suppressed based upon a technicality, and it's an important one in the rules of evidence, but it doesn't change the fact that you don't get to use the confession. And without the confession, you don't have enough evidence. It might be other forms of evidence, and it's a reminder to us of that's why it's so important to be able to ensure that we're building our cases with admissible evidence. Now, sometimes there's changes in the law which make evidence which was once admissible now inadmissible in the process of from charging to trial, and that might be another example of where there's a little bit of a hiccup in the process. But I can't underscore enough how important it is to recognize that our system is designed to protect the rights of the accused. It's also a system that protects the rights of victims, but in general, the criminal justice system is built upon a philosophy that I think it was Benjamin Franklin that had made the quote, and I think others have as well, that the system is one where the intent is that 100 guilty people go free so that one innocent person doesn't get convicted. Okay. And what's interesting is the flip side of that. There was actually a quote that, a similar statement that actually came out of the Inquisition witch trials led by the Catholic Church in Spain. And the standard that was set there was that in the persecution of people who were believed to be witches, it's better that 100 people, innocent people, perish than one, presumably witch, be spared. And so it's sort of interesting how that kind of got turned around in our system. But to look at it from a historical perspective, you can appreciate that. So all in all, when you think about how our system is designed to protect the innocent, to protect the accused, it's a natural part of that process that there are going to be challenges, and that we have to work hard to be able to build the cases in a way where we can meet our burden of proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Now, it has always been my standard, and it's a standard that was inspired by my bosses in the past, that is that we prosecute cases because we believe a crime occurred, and that we can prove those cases beyond a reasonable doubt. And if we have a doubt at some point in the process, then we're not going to go forward with that case. So that winds up being an important first step in ensuring that we are committed to that standard. And I also believe that it contributes to the confidence that our community has in the work that we do.
Looking back to your legacy again, how do you hope to be remembered by your colleagues and by the community?
I hope to be remembered as a person who is transparent, a person of high integrity, a person who brings these qualities to the community because I'm a part of that community, and that our impact in that community is a reflection of all the values that we share. I am a person who will do any job in the office, including taking out the trash. It doesn't matter. I'll do any job. And I like to bring that sense of team to the forefront. I often speak at the office about our work family, and I really mean that, to try to cultivate an environment where people really feel supported, that you produce a synergy, that there is a sense of caring or love that really inspires and helps build the synergy that we need to build. That's what makes people look forward to coming to work. That's what inspires people. That's what helps lift people when they're, feeling stressed and feeling overwhelmed. To know that there's always somebody there who's going to be supporting you, that you can count on to be able to have your back as you go forward and face challenges.
Do you have any community programs or partnerships that you are especially proud of?
Yes. I'm very proud of the work that we have done to promote leadership through education for young students. That has been an important part, frankly, of impacting communities in a way that produces strong leaders, productive leaders, which we need more than ever. My wife and I have dedicated a lot of our spare time to working with students, and certainly in my career from kindergarten all the way through elementary, junior high, high school, college, graduate school. That's been a big commitment for us. I have served on the board of the United States Hispanic Leadership Institute and have organized, along with my wife, a delegation of students from the Pacific Northwest to attend perhaps the most transformative leadership conference of its kind for students. And we're proud of the record that we've seen, where student retention and graduation rates have been through the roof for those that get to have that experience. And that's why it's important to us to see students really go on to be successful, to be productive. And we've seen amazing stories along the way. And a number of those folks have come back to work for Benton County. And it's exciting to see that full circle as people continue to pay it forward. It's very inspiring.
As the first Latino DA in Oregon, how have you worked to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion within the legal system?
One, trying to really promote avenues for access in the study of law for young students, to try to create access points to law school and into legal careers. That has been one focus, certainly. Another has been with regards to promoting recruitment practices that diversify the applicant pool, which gives us an opportunity to have a wider range of applicants. And that I think is something that has really worked well for us, because a lot of times if you don't take proactive steps to recruit outside of, let's say, traditional models, you may not be reaching potential applicants simply by the method of advertising. So a lot, in my view, has to do with the sort of community relationships that you build, the trust that you build, and how you communicate in a way that people truly receive the message and then recognize that this work environment is one that I want to be a part of. It's not enough to simply say we're an equal opportunity employer. There's a much more human element to it, and this doesn't apply to one particular group, but to all humans, all people, to say, how do I know that this is a place I want to go to? And if you think about it, if you look at the want ads or if you see job listings, everybody's competing to try to get the best employees. And so a potential candidate may look at 10 openings, and they all kind of look the same. What makes you stand out in a way that is going to resonate with that particular individual? And that's where the art of communication comes into play, in deciding how are we communicating? Are we building trust? Are we conveying a concept and able to establish the type of foundation necessary to draw in those applicants? Now, some of this for me comes from what I would describe as an old school Latino social practice. And in this old school Latino social practice, I wouldn't simply come up to you in a transactional sort of way and say, hey, would you like to apply here? Or let's say I wanted a job from you. I wouldn't just come up and say, hey, I want a job from you. That would be disrespectful. I would first want to lay a foundation, which means we get to know each other. I may ask you about your family. I may ask you about where you're from, and you ask me the same. And I may never get to the question on that first visit of what I want to ask until I really feel like that foundation is there. We have now built something that has a value, something that is worth keeping. And once we have that foundation and we're communicating, it has a much richer context. With different forms of communication and cultural practices, we can appreciate how one form of communication can be very efficient, while another one can be a lot more grounded in the human connection that then inspires people to say, you know what, I like both opportunities, but I feel a connection here. And so that's what we try to create. That's a really big piece of that. And then, of course, the other part is the retention. How do you retain people? And that can be a challenge, too, because then you get into, competing interests. I've seen in our office where we've been able to diversify, but then we have employees who wind up leaving our office to work for significant salary increases that we can't compete with. Now, I consider that to be a mixed blessing, because if we have worked with someone and developed their skill set and they get to take it somewhere else, that's a value added for our community. They're still in the state of Oregon or wherever they go, really, that we've had a hand in helping develop that. And so that's a body of work that is constant and it continues, and that we remain certainly very committed to. The other aspect that I would say is this. There are cultural dynamics that in the busyness of life sometimes we don't always take note of. And the example that I would share with you is this. I have learned in the course of my career that when a system doesn't represent the community it serves, even with the best of intentions, injustice will occur. So I want to give you an example of how that played out years ago. And when I say years ago, I'm talking about over 30 years ago. I was in court, and there was a young man who was charged with a misdemeanor. I don't remember what the charge was, but he was a monolingual Spanish speaker, and there was an interpreter who was assisting him in the arraignment, first appearance. At the time, the standards were not as high as they are today with regards to the standards that interpreters needed to meet. But I remember the interpreter and I remember the judge, and they were two just really, really nice people. But they weren't Spanish speakers, and they certainly weren't familiar with the Mexican culture. The judge read the charges and asked the young man, how do you plead, guilty or not guilty? And the interpreter says, with a real thick accent, he says, ¿Cómo se declara, culpable o sin culpa? And the young man says, culpable? And the interpreter says, he says guilty, Your Honor. And so I took to my feet and I said, Your Honor, as an officer of the court, I want the record to reflect that Spanish is my first language, and that the response was one of ambivalence. on behalf of the state, I would ask that an attorney be appointed so he can have a meaningful opportunity to participate in this process. And the court granted that. But I use that example because what if I had not been there? You could have all the best intentions in the world, but an injustice happens. And I think that's something that we need to think about in terms of how we communicate. And it's really no different than if you have someone who, has another form of communication that is not well understood. It's going to leave room for misunderstanding, and for misunderstanding, injustice.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That's another great perspective and about the importance of working hard to understand cultures and having that insight. So what advice would you give to young people from underrepresented communities who aspire to get into careers in law?
My advice to young people is, number one, nobody makes it on their own. And it's critically important to develop a network and to seek it out if you don't have it. Number two, develop your communication skills. Our success is defined by our capacity to communicate. And as we develop our communication skills in one language, two languages or more, there's a tremendous capacity there. But we really have to work at it. And of course, I think to some degree that can be more challenging today because we can become technologically isolated and not have the same opportunities to have that human engagement and interaction that can really stimulate the type of networking that I'm referring to and the type of communication as well. So there's a lot of opportunities there. And more than anything, ask questions. To find someone, reach out to an attorney if that's what you're interested in and say, hey, I'd like to speak with you about a career. And we have students that do this, frankly, quite regularly, and we make time for it. But what the worst thing that can happen in a situation like that is somebody says no, and then you ask somebody else. But those resources are there, and they don't cost anything. So I would say use the resources, build a network, develop your communication skills, use the researches, ask questions.
Do you have some exciting plans for retirement?
I do. I am committed to continuing to do things that have profound purpose for me. And I plan to work as a consultant with various projects. I have a strong interest in working in the area of promoting drug courts throughout the country, as well as reforms in the justice systems in Latin America.
Is there a message that you would like to leave with the people of Benton County as you are stepping down from your role?
My message for the people of Benton County is thank you. Thank you for entrusting me in this important position that has been a dream for me. It has been truly a wonderful job, and it's been an incredible honor to be able to fulfill the work of this position for the period of time that the community allowed me to do so. I will never forget it, and I cherish that opportunity, and I cherish those who I was able to share that experience with. They're the ones who really made me better.
Are you planning to stay in the area?
Absolutely. This is my community.
So we'll still be seeing you around?
That's right, yes. Only I probably won't be wearing the tie quite as often.
You'll be dressing more casual? I
expect so.
As I have seen you around town, you always are a sharp-dressed man.
That's funny that you should say that, because I remember not too long ago I was walking down it was downtown, walking the sidewalk, and somebody from across the street on a bicycle started singing the ZZ Top song. And I had to kind of chuckle about that. But that does remind me, one of the other things that I do plan to do is devote a little bit more time to music. I enjoy playing the piano and the drums, and a little-known secret that people don't know is that I have a low-volume drum set in my office at the Benton County Courthouse, and that's something that allows me to step away. Don't get to play during business hours, but when the courthouse is empty, I get to enjoy myself, and because it's low volume, nobody knows it better.
So you play piano, drums. Are there any other instruments that you play?
Well, growing up, I started with the piano. Then I added the violin, guitar. And then one day my brother said, we're going to have a rock band and you're going to play the drums. And so that was my foray into playing the drums in the 5th grade. And here I am today.
And they are great stress relief to sit down and hammer out some beats once in a while.
You know, it's I think, an important thing for us to be able to balance our lives, balance our brains right and left side, and to really find those outlets that help us really manage the stress that we face. For some people, it's cooking, dancing, singing, music, painting, meditating. You know, there's a whole host of different activities. And that has been an important lesson in the work that I do, because the fact is that working in the justice system does bring with it a degree of gravitas that can have a collective weight. And if you don't have a way to manage that, it's going to be difficult to have a long career without burning out. So that's always been at the forefront for me. My wife and I, we love to dance, we love music, and that's a big part of one of those healthy outlets that we get to enjoy.
First of all, I'd like to say thank you very much for your time, but more importantly, thank you for your service. It really means a lot, and we appreciate it as a community. But also, knowing that philosophy is very important to you, I'd just like to ask you if there's just one final piece of wisdom that you'd like to impart to the audience.
My final piece of wisdom is answering the question, what is justice? As prosecutors, our charge is the pursuit of justice through the truth. That sounds great, but if it has no meaning, they're just pretty words. And yet, defining justice is not an easy thing. Greek philosophers wrote volumes. Philosophers have written treatises about it. What is justice? But I've challenged the deputy DAs that work with me to always consider that, because we have to know what it is that we pursue in order to pursue it and to realize justice. So here's the lesson. Justice is dynamic, and it builds upon the wisdom that we gain. The longer we live, the more we know, and then the more we experience. The big takeaway is justice requires two things to exist. And without these two things, justice cannot exist. The first, you must have a community. And a community is comprised of people working together as an entity, if you will, as a body. And the second, you must have love. People have to care. And if you bring those two together, then you create a fertile soil for justice. But if you take love and caring out of the equation, you're not going to have justice. And if you don't have a community, you're not going to have justice. That's one of the beautiful things about Benton County, that at the core of our community is a sense of love and caring, a connection. And that's really ultimately the takeaway. I've had the opportunity to have a wonderful career in a place that offers community and love, which is ideal for the pursuit of justice through the truth.
With John retiring, it's going to be a big change. He's done such a fantastic job of bringing together such an amazing team in the DA's office and making connections with other department directors like myself over the years.
As the elected DA, John just has a great history of pursuing justice through the truth.
He's a person of outstanding integrity, and that shows in what he does every day. John has helped keep the community safe. John, thank you for your incredible efforts on behalf of Benton County. You've left us in good shape, but I will miss you, and I'm pretty sure Benton County will miss you.
Those were the voices of Benton County Commissioner Pat Malone, as well as Benton County Chief Deputy District Attorney Ryan Jocelyn. We also heard the voice of Benton County Elections Department Director James Morales. These are colleagues of District Attorney John Haroldson, whose official retirement date is August 30th, 2024. Others whose personal and professional lives have been touched by Mr. Haroldson had kind words to offer as he rounds out his service to the community.
I met John actually in court. He was a prosecutor, and I was just hired as one of the team members for the Crime Victims Unit. That's when I got to know him as a person. I got to see his values, the principles, and really grew to admire his sense of justice and his patience and understanding and accommodating victims' needs. There are community members from all walks of life, elected officials, that will thank him for the service that he has provided, not just Benton County, but across the state and nationally. And they see him as a leader, as a Latino. And being the first Latino or Hispanic District Attorney in Oregon's history, we collectively feel that pride for him because it's a big accomplishment, but it also opens up an avenue for the community and the state to understand that if you can see it, you can be it.
That was the voice of Maria Chavez Haroldson, who is the spouse of District Attorney John Haroldson. You can visit Benton County on YouTube, where you can hear past episodes of the Benton County Public Podcast. You can catch the video of the tribute to District Attorney Haroldson, featuring the voices we just heard, and see other videos. Just go to YouTube and search for @BentonCoGov. This has been episode 12 of the Benton County Public Podcast. Our executive producer is Public Information Officer Cory Grogan. Our theme music was written and composed by Doug Sowers, and a special thanks goes out to Ash Terry for providing audio for today's episode. I'm Dan Crall, the producer and host of the Benton County Public Podcast. If you'd like to offer any feedback on this podcast, our email is pioinfo@bentoncountyor.gov. You can find more information about Benton County, including vital services and the latest job openings. Just go to our website, bentoncountyor.gov.